what is it that influences culture? And what is it that influences story and narrative? It's content.
All right, then it's time for us to have another really interesting conversation. Today we have with us on the line Mudzithe Phiri. Now, she is festival manager for the Africa Book and Design Festival. Now, she's experienced in business development and she has a history of working in marketing, media, advertising. She's also skilled in strategy, business planning, sales management, marketing, and so many other fields. In fact, who better to chair such an event? When it comes to project management, content marketing, sales, branding, content development, events management, she's done it all. So we decided it would be great to have a conversation with someone whose passion is Africa, someone who wants to see it become a self-sustaining economy, someone who wants to see an end to poverty and, of course, poverty on the continent of Africa. And in fact, when it comes to how much money can be made in Africa, yeah, she's been interested in that too for a very long time. It's great to have you with us. Hi.
Thank you so much for having me. I'm so excited to be part of your show.
All right, then. So for those that have never heard of the Africa Design and Book Festival, you need to tell us exactly how it started and what it's all about.
So it's actually our inaugural year. So this is the first time that we are hosting the Africa Book and Design Festival. And the festival was really born from the love and passion for Africa. Like you said, my entire career has been about giving back and being part of the movement to really change the narrative for Africans, but not just the narrative in terms of the story we tell, but the narrative in terms of real life, you know. And so my business partner, who's my big sister, Nonsanta Mashazi, and I would sit in the office and just talk about what are the things that we can really do that can have real impact. And at the core of Africa's problem is mindset. We don't value our identity as Africans. We don't value the brand Africa. We don't value what we bring to the table. And I think that's because we don't have an authentic African identity to define what it is that we bring to the table. A lot of what we do is still through the lens of the way the rest of the world has portrayed us, you know? And so when you think about what is it that influences culture and what is it that influences story and narrative, it's content. But the rest of the content out there, television content, most of it that we consume, we still are not the ones at the back of writing those stories. And those stories are still conditioned to perpetuate the same view and ideas that we have about ourselves. The one content form that is still authentic and can still speak to who we really are is literature. You know, so for us, we thought if there's something that can really help us change mindset, especially for the next generation, it's books, it's literature. And having that reading culture will allow us to be able to really take control of forming our narrative. And that's how the Africa Book and Design Festival was born.
All right, then. So this feels like a really lofty event. It feels huge. It feels like something so big that you wonder how you put it together and how you decided to put it into, I think, is it 4 or 5 tranches? So you say explore books, browse events, discover design, get up close and personal, and build a community of books as well. So why did you divide it into those 5, and what should we look forward to?
So Discover Books, we wanted to create a digital space where people could access African literature. You know, a lot of the books that are put in the front are not books written by African authors. They, you know, I always laugh when people say, oh, Africans don't read, that's why we don't have a publishing industry. And I say, but then why is Pan Macmillan here? why is Penguin Random House here? They clearly somebody's reading, you know.
Very true.
We have bookstores. We have bookstores literally everywhere. In Johannesburg CBD alone, there's almost 100 bookstores, you know, and the majority of people living in Africa are Black. So, of course, Black people read, but we just don't read African literature. And again, that goes back to our perception of African content and the African brand. When it's African, we don't see the value in it. We will all rush and buy Will Smith's book because we see the value in African American culture. We see the value in African American content. But we won't, and we'll buy John Grisham because we see the value in white culture and in white content. But we don't buy African literature because it's like, oh, what is another African going to tell me? You know, because of that perception that we have about ourselves. And so we wanted to create a space where people could easily find those stories. It's so important. Representation is so very important in changing mindsets. I mean, look at Matthew Cherry's book, the one about My Beautiful Hair. You know, that the book, it's a children's book, and every African around the world fell in love with that story because we all relate to being that little girl with the unruly hair and thinking it's ugly, you know. So can you imagine the impact young people felt, children felt, seeing themselves in that book? But again, it's not easily accessible. It's not easy for, I have a 17-year-old and she does not think there's books by Africans being written for her. And yet there are lots of books. I mean, maybe Okorafor, who's Nigerian, she's writing great content for young adults and imagining a new future for Africa. So we wanted to create a platform where you can go in there and discover books for young people, for older people.
Okay.
All of them about Africans.
All right.
And then discover design.
Design. When you put books beside design, I kind of had that inkling that it wasn't about the design of the books. It had to do with design. We talking furniture design? Are we talking property design? Are you talking architecture? What sort of design are we touching on? So with design at the core of it, the reason we added this is because Africans are very visual, you know, and we do have a very dismal publishing industry in terms of the numbers that books sell across the continent. Nigeria is a big market for books, for example, but the biggest problem in Nigeria is piracy. You know, I remember being in Lagos and I saw Chimamanda's books in the streets. I was like, really? Yeah.
You know, I was so surprised, but you know, that's one of the big problems. But anyway, when we talk about design, we are saying, let's reimagine literature for a visual market. The design element allows us to explore graphic elements, to explore illustration elements. And then the most important part of the design element for the festival is design thinking. Okay. Design thinking is created through reading. If we want to create a new narrative for Africa, we have to have the ability to design new narratives for Africa. So you can only get that ability from reading a book. When you watch TV, the world has already been created for you. But when you read a book, you have to create that world for yourself in your imagination. You know, so we wanted to add that design element to demonstrate first the importance of having design thinking and as a tool, as a resource for us to change the narrative for Africa. And then also just to bring in that visual element, because young people, Gen Z, who make up the majority of the continent, they love visual content. So we have to figure out how we can combine those two together so that we take literature with us into the digital age.
Speaking of digital, I was going to touch on that because when you say explore books now, everyone has an Amazon Kindle. Everyone is reading books from their phones, downloading the e-books, the e-copies. Have you put this into consideration? That's first of all. Then secondly, we need to touch a bit on the program and if we're going to hear from any African authors during the festival.
The design, the digital element, and yeah, we haven't made the announcement yet. We'll be making it later today. Technomobile has come on board to support the digital element of the festival, and the message that we want to send is exactly what you said, that books do fit into the digital age. It's no longer about going into a store and buying books, although most older generations will disagree. But
True.
for younger people, like, and reading on the phone, that's how you access books today. And we want to push that message, especially for parents, because yes, it's a problem that children are on their devices a lot, but there's a lot of good things that they could be doing on their phones. They could be reading books. They could be writing content. There's platforms like Wattpad in the US that has young people, that allows young people to write content and fan fiction, and it's all about new stories. And it's young people who are using these platforms. And so we want to bring that conversation to Africa as well, to say books do have a place in the digital age.
All right. Fantastic. Now I'm looking at the timetable here for the event. It's starting on Thursday, the 11th of November, 2021. And wrapping up on Saturday, November 13th. Am I right?
So the 11th is the first day, but it's fully digital. We're trying out Twitter Spaces because lots of young people are engaging on Twitter Spaces. So the majority of the authors that we do have are South African because of COVID. A lot of people still can't come to South Africa because we are still red listed for travel, unfortunately. But we actually do we are flying in Damilare Kuku. I'm sure you know, she's written the book, Nearly All the Men in Lagos Are Mad. So she's going to be down. Yeah. We're excited to talk to her, and she's going to be on the women's panel on Saturday. We have Romeo Oriogun, who's also from Nigeria. He's a poet. He's taking part also virtually from Nigeria on the Friday the 12th on the Poetry Evening. We have one of the publishers from
Kachifo
to discuss how we continue to make literature relevant in a digital market, and how do we get Africans reading more books and writing more books. And it's quite an extensive program. And the great part about the program is that the conversations we're having are very relevant to today. For example, the opening Twitter space on Thursday is with Joanne Joseph, who is a South African Indian former journalist. And she's written a book about Indian and Black relations. I'm not sure how familiar you are with current affairs in South Africa, but we had the Phoenix Massacre, where Indians in the community were shooting at Black people, and it's caused such a racial divide between the two communities. And she's written this book, Children of Sugarcane, to show South Africans that before the apartheid system divided the two cultures, those Black people and Indians were integrated, because Indians were brought to South Africa to farm, to work the sugarcane farms. And back then, there were Black people also working the sugarcane farms, and the communities integrated. But they deliberately divided them when they created the apartheid system so that they can control us. It's always been the same formula, divide and conquer. So that's the opening conversation. So we know Twitter is going to go crazy on that one, because people are still very and emotional about what happened. On Friday morning, the first conversation we're having is with Mandla Langa, who is one of South Africa's most acclaimed authors. And his book is about the dual cultural identities that live in South Africa. South Africans are very sensitive about African foreigners.
Yes. The Lost Language of the Soul, I believe. Right? That's the name of his book?
Yes, that's the name of his book. And he titled it that, to say that we've lost the language that connects us as Africans. And that's the lost language of the soul that he's talking about. And we want to have those conversations, especially right now in South Africa. I always laugh when people start to talk about anti-Nigerian narratives. I say, do you know that when you go to these primary schools, half the kids are half South African, half Nigerian?
Interesting.
So we just have to come to terms with the fact that we are connected, and there's no going back. And it's a superpower. It's an advantage for us to bring our cultures together, and those are the kinds of conversations that are going to be coming from the Africa Book and Design Festival. I could go on and on and on.
Honestly, I'm interested in touching on Lupita Nyong'o's book. I can see that here indicated. Now, you classified these 3 books into the past, the present, and the future. You tagged Chinua Achebe's Things Fall Apart as the past, obviously. The present, you tagged The Lost Language of the Soul by Mandla Langa. And then Sulive. Is that Sulive or Sulwe? Sulwe by Lupita Nyong'o. Now, honestly speaking, this is the first time I'm hearing that she's actually put a book together, which is, honestly, I'm pained that I'm hearing it for the first time. But you need to touch on the past, present, and the future when it comes to literacy in Africa.
So they say that Chinua Achebe's Things Fall Apart was the beginning of African literacy. That's what they say. But actually, we've had African literature from as far back as the 1920s. And Chinua Achebe was in the 60s. So that content, though, is still very relevant and still very important to our decolonization, because that tells us the experience of past generations who actually moved through that process when we were still very much colonized. I mean, we are still colonized now, but it's more a mindset colonization than a physical colonization. But understanding those experiences from the past is what's going to start to allow us to see why we look at ourselves the way we do today and why we don't value the African brand today. Then the present is content like Mandla Langa's that confronts our present reality, the xenophobia, the lost language that connects us, because that's one of the things that's really vital for us to be able to move forward as Africans. Africa needs to unite. There's no two ways about it. Unfortunately, we're not going to be able to take control of our narrative without us coming together, because to have a narrative, it has to be something we do together. It has to be one voice. It doesn't make sense for Nigeria to be saying one thing and Kenya to be saying another thing, and no one's going to listen to us. China communicates one voice. Korea communicates as one voice. And that's why they've been able to build some kind of cultural power on the global stage. If we want to be able to also have a place on the global platform, we need to speak with one voice. And that's the present reality. And then the future is our children. And I used Sulwe as an example because we need to write more children's books. There's not a lot of children's books on the market written by Africans, and we need to ask ourselves who is shaping their mindset, their ideas of what they believe Africa is and what it means to be African. Who is shaping that? It's American content,
True.
And that's not going to give them anything. So we use that book to say, if we want to take control of our narrative and reshape a future for Africa, we need to write children's books so that they can have a new mindset, an unconditioned mindset that is authentic to their African identity and culture.
It's amazing everything you said. I had a very similar conversation just last week with a lovely lady called Tonye Falogi. Now, she is a mother of a special needs child, and she decided to create a series of books centered around the fact that African special needs moms are never found writing books. In fact, she is the author of the first ever African written special needs book for children. And that came as a big surprise for me, because her daughter has Down syndrome, and she had experience in content creation and production. And you should check her out, Tonye Falogi. She started a YouTube channel as well. So I completely understand where you're going with exposing good books, their authors, and of course connecting with the African audience. And I did note that your objectives go forward to say that showing a reading habit is an acquired habit by sending the message that African parents start their children reading books early, that one struck me. So I have this huge bookshelf in my house, and it's right around the TV. It's not under the TV, beside it, it's right around it. And I do what I can to encourage my kids to pick up a book. I have quite a few myself because I have a book club podcast and a book club radio show. But it has been difficult. So I'm wondering how during the festival you're planning to connect with young people, and how are you planning to get them to actually pick up a book? It's one thing to talk about it. It's another thing for it to actually happen.
Every reader I know, including myself, and I'm sure you also relate, we started reading when we were very young. Reading is a habit you have to acquire. And I think it's important, the same way we say you have to have study time, you have to have reading time. And reading not for school. Because in South Africa, for example, a lot of young people only read for school. And that's not pleasurable reading. That's like you have to do it. Pleasurable reading, you have to learn to love books. Because, and honestly, the best way to do it, the easiest way to do it is to start when they're babies. Even when they're still in your womb, read to them. When they're babies, read to them. Start by reading to them so that a book is something is one of the first things they see. And by the time they can pick up that first book when they're 2 years old, it's already something that is familiar to them, and it won't be so strange to say, mommy bringing books and saying you have to have set aside time to read. But if they're older, I think it just needs to be that. Say, every day, all of us, let's read a chapter. As a family, let's adopt the habit of reading. Every month, let's all go to the bookstore and pick a book to read. Have a book club in your home as a family. Especially today, that's what I'm saying. We need to write more books. We should write books for families that we can sit and have conversations about politics. Because you know that Africans don't even understand politics and how politics works.
True. Very true.
And I think that's a conversation that can be had in the house as a family. And if there was a book that can explain politics from a children's age all the way up to something that will get the family talking and understanding how the political structures of the world work. We just have to be intentional. One of the authors that's going to be at the event, Sunyati, she's from Zimbabwe, she says we just don't prioritize it. We will spend money, 1,000 rand, for example, to go to a concert, to go to dinner as a family. But we're not going to say let's go to a bookstore as a family. So we just have to prioritize it and be intentional, because we know the value that it's going to give to our children if they can read. And that's our key message is to say, yes, you're an adult. It might be difficult for you to pick up a book and read, but make sure your kids do. Make sure you give that to your kids before you even give them a cell phone.
The challenge has become kids end up doing what they see, not exactly what you say they should do. So in the end, parents have to still pick up that book eventually. But away from that, I wanted to touch on your collaboration with the Department of Sport, Arts and Culture in South Africa. How did they come on board, and what sort of support are they giving?
They gave us money.
I like that.
The best of exactly.
I like that.
So, and that's the government's job. We pitched this to the government in 2019.
Okay.
And then COVID came. It was meant to be for 2020. We pitched it in 2019 for 2020. The Department of Sports, Arts and Culture has a literacy division that's dedicated to promoting literacy and creating an environment for the publishing industry to grow. So we approached them and we said, this is what we want to do. And it made sense for their objective for the government. And then COVID came and we really thought it wasn't going to happen because all budgets were fighting COVID.
Everything.
But, so at least I think, thank God, the people at the department, I think now South Africa is starting to think post-COVID. What are we doing post-COVID? And one of the things that is priority for them is literacy. So I guess they were sitting down and saying one of our priorities post-COVID is literacy publishing. Here's a project that was pitched to us in 2019. They gave us a call and they funded us. And that's pretty much the role of the government, to fund projects like this that feed into their larger objectives for society.
Of course.
Yeah, so they gave us funding, they gave us access to their network, and they really supported us in every way possible, to be honest with you. So we're really, really grateful for this partnership. I really hope it's something that can be emulated across the continent, because literacy is so important.
I was just about to touch on that. It. Bringing it to other countries, for instance, like Nigeria, and seeing if there can be some kind of collaboration there as well. It would be amazing. There's a university, the venue, the Future Africa Campus, University of Pretoria, right? That's where your events are holding?
The Future Africa Campus was created to do research for us to create a better future, you know. And so it's mostly a scientific institution, but they realized that the arts and culture are at the core of everything. So they are actually developing an arts and culture program and define if arts and culture are what influence even science. You know, we went to the moon before in a movie or in a book before we went to the moon in real life.
True.
So, So I think they also realize that we need to bring arts and culture into the space. And we are so excited to associate with the brand, because it is about reimagining a future for Africa and actively creating that future. And so it couldn't be a better place for us to host the event.
All right then, Mudzithe, we are excited about this event. We're excited about what you're doing, and we have to appreciate you for everything you do. Keep your head up. We know that events are often stressful to pull off, but this one looks like you have it in the bag.
I have to say, I have support, and everybody believes in it. I think that's why it looks like it's all going well. Everybody is excited and they understand what we're trying to do. So everybody we've approached.
All right then.
The publishing industry, the authors, everybody can see that it's necessary.
Perfect. All right. So one thing I will encourage you to do, Mudzithe, please send your authors over to me. Now, I have a book club podcast called the On Air Book Club, and I actually read live from these books and have conversations with the authors. That's my own little contribution to the literary industry here in Nigeria. I have had a few authors from other countries as well, but African authors are the focus. Just send them over to me via email, as many as you want. I'll bring them on air every single week, just to keep pushing the culture.
Awesome. I would definitely do that. And let's talk about a much more solid partnership for 2022 and going forward.
Of course. I can't wait. It's been a pleasure having this conversation with you. And hey, if they want to reach you, how can they get through to you?
So we are on all social media platforms. On Twitter, we are at AfriBookDesign. On Instagram, we are Africa Book and Design Fest. On Facebook, it's Africa Book and Design TV. Okay. We also have a YouTube channel, Africa Book and Design TV as well, which will be streaming all the events
live
for 3 days on our YouTube channel.
Amazing.
And then also our website, www.africabookanddesign.com. You can reach out to us there too. Join the community.
Definitely. I'm going to be there. All right, then. Thank you so much, Mudzithe Phiri here. Now, she is the festival coordinator. Now, she is amazing, and she's given us quite a lot to think about with regard to what we can do to contribute to improve on the lifestyle and, of course, the culture in Africa. Thanks again.
Thank you so much, Titi.
Have a great day.
Bye.
Now, if you would like to reach out to us, you can reach us by hitting us up on Twitter. That's at Africa Biz Radio, or indeed on Instagram, LinkedIn, and Facebook at Africa Business Radio. We are right there. Of course, if you would like to share some information with us, you can always hit us up on our website. That's www.africabusinessradio.com. My name is Titilayo Oyinso, and I'm at Titi the Dynamite. Thanks for listening.
you.